The Pacific War was not fought gently. By the early 1940s, it had become a war without mercy. Across Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands, armies advanced through jungles, cities, and camps. And behind the front lines, another war was being fought. A war against prisoners. Allied soldiers captured by the Japanese military were sent to prison camps. Some were marched for days. Some were starved. Some were beaten. Many did not survive. Cruelty was not accidental. It was expected. Prisoners were considered weak. Surrender was considered shameful, and mercy was seen as dangerous. Orders came down clearly. Prisoners were to be controlled, disciplined, broken if necessary. Any officer who showed softness risked being reported, and reports carried consequences. Disobedience could mean arrest, court-martial, execution. The system rewarded obedience and punished hesitation. Inside one of these camps served a Japanese officer. He wore the same uniform as the others. He followed orders. He saluted superiors. From the outside, there was nothing remarkable about him. He was not famous. He was not powerful. And he did not command armies. His authority extended only so far as the fences around the camp. Inside those fences were enemy soldiers. British, Australian, American, men who had been taught to expect death here. Men who assumed no one was coming to help them. The officer saw them every day. He saw their condition. He saw hunger hollow their faces. He saw sickness spread. He heard the sounds at night, and he understood something clearly. These men would not survive. If nothing changed, no rescue was coming. No intervention would arrive in time. If they lived or died, would depend on the choices made inside the camp. And most choices here had already been decided. The orders were clear. The system was clear. The consequences were clear. What was not clear was what this officer would do next. Because refusing to obey did not mean open rebellion. It meant something quieter, something slower, something far more dangerous. It meant choosing restraint inside a system built on cruelty. And once that choice was made, there would be no turning back. The officer did not make a speech. He did not announce anything. There was no dramatic refusal, no open defiance. That would have meant death. Instead, the change was subtle, almost invisible. Orders were followed, but interpreted carefully. Work details were shortened, not by much, just enough. Punishments were delayed, then delayed again. Paperwork took longer than it should have. Medical inspections were scheduled, then rescheduled. Food portions were adjusted, quietly. A little more rice here, a little less taken away there. Nothing that could be proven, nothing that could be traced directly back to him. The officer learned how to say no, without ever saying the word. When guards went too far, he intervened calmly, not angrily. Anger drew attention. Calm authority did not. He reminded them of regulations, of appearances, of discipline. He framed mercy as order, restraint as efficiency, protection as procedure. The prisoners noticed the change. Not immediately, but slowly. Fewer beatings, more water, moments to rest, moments to breathe. Small things, but in a place like this, small things meant survival. The officer never spoke to the prisoners about what he was doing. That would have been dangerous. Instead, he communicated through absence. The absence of cruelty, the absence of punishment, the absence of death. Every day carried risk. Any guard could report him. Any superior could arrive unannounced. Any inspection could end everything. But the officer continued, not because he believed he would succeed, but because stopping would mean watching them die. And that was something he had already decided he would not do. What the officer was doing could not stay hidden forever. The camp was not isolated. Superiors visited. Inspectors arrived without warning. Paperwork was checked. Reports were compared. Any inconsistency could expose everything. Every act of restraint left a trace. Every delay raised questions. Guards began to notice. Some were confused. Others were suspicious. A few were angry. Kindness disrupted routine, and routine was everything. The officer learned to balance constantly. Too much protection would draw attention. Too little would mean death. He adjusted day by day, sometimes hour by hour. When inspections came, he tightened control. Punishments returned briefly. Food portions shrank again, not because he wanted them to, but because survival required camouflage. Cruelty became a disguise, and restraint had to be hidden inside it. At night, he reviewed lists, work assignments, medical notes, numbers that represented lives. He knew exactly how many men were still breathing because of time gained. He also knew How quickly that could change. One report, one accusation, one superior deciding to make an example. He slept lightly, always listening, always waiting for footsteps that meant the end. Yet he continued, not because he believed he could protect everyone, but because even saving one life was worth the risk, and because stopping now would mean becoming exactly what the system demanded. The prisoners never knew how close they came to losing him, and he never told them. If the war took his life, it would do so quietly, without witnesses, without recognition. But until that moment came, he would keep buying time, one delay at a time. The war did not pause for the camp. It moved closer, then farther away. Front lines shifted, supply lines stretched, bombs fell elsewhere, and time passed. Slowly, painfully, inside the camp, men continued to weaken, but they did not disappear as quickly as expected. Illness still came, hunger still followed, but death slowed, not stopped, slowed. And in a place like this, that difference mattered. Men who would have collapsed survived another week, another month, long enough for treatment, long enough for rest, long enough for something else to change. The officer never told anyone how close it came to ending. He never explained how many times he hid restraint behind regulation, how often cruelty was staged to protect mercy elsewhere. To the prisoners, he remained distant, professional, unremarkable. That was intentional. Kindness here would have been dangerous. Then one day, the rhythm changed. Rumors moved faster than orders. Guards whispered. Prisoners noticed shifts in behavior. Supplies arrived unexpectedly, then stopped, then arrived again. And finally, the war ended. Not with relief, but with confusion. Orders ceased. Authority dissolved unevenly. Some guards fled. Others waited. The prisoners remained behind the fences, unsure what freedom looked like now. When liberation finally came, it did not come cleanly. Bodies were counted. Names were recorded. Stories were gathered. And slowly, it became clear that far more men had survived than anyone expected. No one knew why. At least, not officially. The officer did not step forward. He did not explain himself. He did not ask to be remembered. When the system collapsed, he vanished back into anonymity. The prisoners went home. They rebuilt lives. They carried memories they would rarely speak of. And somewhere among those memories was a man who had chosen restraint when obedience was easier. A man who had saved lives by doing almost nothing that could be seen. The officer was never celebrated. There were no medals, no speeches, no photographs taken afterward. History did not record his name clearly. In official reports, he barely existed at all. The prisoners went home. They told fragments of what they remembered. The hunger, the fear, the men who did not survive. And sometimes, they mentioned something else. That conditions were not as brutal as they could have been. That someone had intervened, quietly, carefully, without explanation. But war does not reward restraint. It rewards victory. It rewards obedience. It rewards results that can be measured. What this officer did could not be measured easily. There was no single moment, no dramatic rescue, no final stand, only time gained. Days, weeks, months, enough for men to survive until the war ended. History often asks, who won? Who lost? Who was right? Who was wrong? But sometimes the more important question is simpler. Who chose not to become worse than they already were? This officer did not stop the war. He did not undo its crimes. He did not erase its suffering. But inside a system built on cruelty, he refused to let it consume him completely. He chose restraint when violence was expected. He chose delay when death was efficient. He chose humanity when anonymity made cruelty easy. And because of that, men lived. Not many people know his story. That is not an accident. Stories like this do not fit neatly into history. They complicate it. They remind us that even inside the worst systems, choice still exists. And that sometimes the most dangerous decision is not to rebel loudly, but to refuse quietly.